Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We've got hockey back. Yay. But I don't know how long we're going to have baseball the way things are going right now. We'll start with the pre-show, and based on what I just said, that's what we'll be talking about. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, look, a lot of us were skeptical about baseball because they weren't going to have it in a bubble. Originally, they were thinking about it, and then they went away from it. And the travel worried all of us. I remember we all talked about it, didn't think it was a great idea. And now that seems to be the main culprit here. But the problem is Major League Baseball seems to have put the commissioner in charge of everything. And that means if he's in charge of deciding what happens after he gets the medical advice, this is not like a great system. They don't have any system really. And now,
well, let's just tell everybody, and I'm sure that they've heard it, but we'll just specify what's going on.
Go ahead.
I think it's 8 players and 2 to 4 coaches.
8 additional players.
8 additional players.
11 total out of 33, and 2 coaches have tested positive.
From the Miami Marlins, who were playing against Philadelphia this weekend. They all tested positive. Their game, now they're stuck in Philadelphia right now with a number of, I'm sure that's pleasurable for you, Ak.
That's fantastic.
And the Marlins were to play in Miami, and their opener, that's been canceled. The Phillies were supposed to play the Yankees. That game has been canceled.
The players are supposed to report to the ballpark to get testing and then go right home.
Yeah, and
not to be semantic, Mike, use the word postpone because given the schedule, the game is technically supposed to be made up at some point in time, so we're using the word postpone, not canceled.
Well, there's going to be a slew of double headers, and I heard Buster Olney this morning talk about this, and he says with these taxi squads and the ability to expand rosters if needed, Major League Baseball, if 10 players are out for Miami, they're just going to call up 10 players, but they need to weed out the positives and the negatives.
But it's not that simple because what doesn't seem to be happening here, which may finally happen now with the cancellations, is some contact tracing because they don't seem to have done any of it. Yeah. And we were talking offline, and like Jan had mentioned, Travis d'Arnaud the other day didn't play against the Mets, neither did another catcher. They stood behind Atlanta. It may have started then, but again, MLB doesn't do any contact tracing, so they just said, hey, guys, just stay behind. You'll be okay. Right. But the other problem is when they gave the Marlins the choice to play or not play yesterday, they wanted to play, but they also knew they had a problem, and they played without masks. And to me, that may have been the dumbest decision of all of them.
That's incredibly irresponsible of them as a team to do that. I don't care if it's in a group. Again, nice to know you guys had a group text about that, but guess what? Last I checked, you guys aren't carrying MDs.
Right.
And how does it going to impact the umpires as well now, especially the umpires?
Everybody, and then you've got anybody who's involved. You've got anybody who basically they could possibly have been in contact with, whether there's staff in the stadium, whoever's there. Right. They put everybody at risk.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's more than just the Marlins. All I know is I watched 2 of the 3 Yankees Nationals games, and in the dugout, when Gleyber Torres hit a home run, they did the fake high five and the jump up and elbow. But in the dugout, one guy's taking the other guy's helmet off. They're all high-fiving each other with or without gloves on. Half the guys are wearing masks. Half the guys aren't wearing masks. They're all sitting in the dugout. They're not sitting up in the stands where they have these big tents. There is no social distancing. So really, they're paying lip service to this, and they're really now. I don't know. Maybe they've all been tested, so they think that they're okay. But obviously, with what's just happened,
what it seems right. What it seems like, guys, is that they went the cheapest possible route. And it's easier if you're in the bubble, right? Because I didn't get to mention it the other day, but when I was on the call for the NHL, they basically have almost like their own little medical setup, like a patient first kind of setup to test everybody at all times, players, people who work there, staff, all that, right? MLB doesn't have that. Everything's being outsourced. And the fact that they were still letting everybody stay in the dugout and use the locker room after seems like a big mistake. And again, originally they weren't going to let guys in the locker room. And what they really should do is not let guys in the dugout unless they're playing and let the other ones sit out in the stands. That's what they should do. And they should come already dressed, and they shouldn't go in the locker room at all. This is if they could even continue to play, because I know everybody says, oh, no, well, this is just a little blip. This could turn into more. We don't know yet.
Well, that's part of the reason why they built the quote-unquote auxiliary dugouts with the tents to be able guys to have social distancing. And there were guys you saw last night, if you watched Sunday Night Baseball, who were sitting behind the original dugout, right? But as you said, if you're not going to have masks, if you're not going to social distance, these are the ramifications that you're going to have, and it's only unfortunately potentially going to get worse. At least in the bubble, you're controlling those who can come in and those who come out. You see what happened in the NBA. There's a couple of guys who went outside the bubble. They now are forced to quarantine for a certain period of time and have a certain amount of negative tests, but they're being segregated and segmented from the rest of the population here. Guys are going home. Guys are dealing with their families and everything else.
Let's talk about the guy who went outside the bubble, because he got permission to go outside because there was a death in the family and he went to a wake. But then he had to get some chicken wings and he went to get them at a strip club.
Strip club, correct.
Good look.
Nothing
says good chicken wings like a strip club.
But he was going to have to segment anyway. You look at Zion Williamson from the NBA, who went out. He has to segregate for 4 days, which was part of the process. Here,
and he played for the 76ers.
I think he was exposed, given what we just said. Yeah. But unfortunately, he exposed himself in terms of getting other people ill or not being exposed to other people and now having.
You mean I shouldn't go to a strip club tonight for dinner?
And he played for the 76ers at one time. Lou Williams is the guy.
Lou Williams. I think he's with the Raptors now.
He's with the Clippers. And
but he was with the Sixers.
He's the one who actually went. Wait a minute, let me get this straight here. He's the one who went to the strip club.
Yes.
See, I'm laughing because, again, I'm thinking about Joel Embiid from several weeks ago, who flat out said, I don't trust anybody. I know guys in the room. He knows exactly he's like, I can trust me. I know what I'm going to do.
Right.
I can't account for everybody else.
I'm sure those wings
exactly the scenario he was thinking of.
I'm sure those wings were extra hot, right?
I'm gonna have to tell my wife that we can't go to the strip club tonight for dinner. We're gonna go there.
They were Anchor Bar quality, Mike.
No, they were deadly. You mean, right?
Oh my God!
Now, what I did laugh at
is the new name of the Buffalo Arena.
In the best of times, would you have chicken fingers from a strip club?
No. But the best thing about this was
answer that question right now.
Wings and things.
A former NBA player on ESPN tried to rationalize this by saying, "Well, I live down in Houston, and a lot of people do get the food from the strip clubs." That's like, stop.
Anthony, I hope they don't serve crab.
I've heard Delilah's does an unbelievable buffet.
There was a time they didn't have food. They only have food because they have to now.
I hope they don't serve crabs.
All right.
I don't know where to go from there.
Mute yourself, Mike, for a while, please.
Mike
he's in the box 5 minutes.
Mike had to ruin it.
Yeah, please. All right. Hockey World.
We're good.
Monday, July 27th. The last day for a very long time that we won't be able to talk about actual hockey. 2020. I'm
Michael Agello, wearing yellow.
I'm Jan Levine, and Mike should be muted for the rest of the show after that prior comment.
I'm Anthony Majoni, and Agello needs to get a game, at the minimum, a game misconduct and a hearing.
Russ Cohen from Sportology. I'm a lot better behaved.
Anna McLennan. Thank God for Canada. That's all I can say. I mean, honestly, guys, Canadians, thank you, guys. Thank you just for everything you've done, for taking this the right way, for masking up, for being responsible,
making better beer,
but just for the sport in general, just
Rush and Sarah McLaughlin.
I know there's so many things, but because it's listen, I'm not a baseball fan. I know you guys are, and but even I watched a bit of late.
But let me just say this. Yes, Canada deserves a lot of credit for what they've done in terms of approaching this dreaded pandemic. But that being said, I saw statistics over the last couple of days that COVID is rising in Ontario. It's 65% of the people who've tested positive, with the rate increasing, are under the age of 30. So this is not something where what is being done in the U.S. right now and the way people are acting is irresponsible, and it's entailing this spread. But again, this is something that does not have a cure, and eventually, the way things are going, no matter how you try to prevent things, people are going to get it.
No, it's not going away until we get a vaccine, and even then, it won't go away fully. I mean, it's not going away. It's the reality is this is part of our world, right? And it's going to be okay. We're going to learn how to deal with it. We're going to adjust to it. There's going to be a vaccine. People are going to get it.
People adjusted to the bubonic plague.
It's exactly. Just like someone dropped another common cold that's a lot more obviously but they drop something else into our lap. This is something new. This is what we have to deal with. It's part of our reality now, right? And that's fine. The fact that the NHL got in the bubble, I was like, we were all like on pins and needles for them just to get into the friggin' bubble.
And then the news came out today that there was only 2 more positives,
which is phenomenal. And that's not saying still that I'm still not nervous about the Tampa Lightning and the Florida Panthers and stuff like that up there, because it could take time to test positive sometimes for this thing, so it's not like what we're seeing with the Marlins. These places, the Dallas Stars, these are tough. These are places that are hotbeds right now, Arizona. So, but they're in the bubble at least now. I think once you get them in there now and you get once we get a week or 2 into this thing, I'll feel really comfortable. Then it'll be okay, anybody who has the thing lingering or whatever, they're not going to get it in the bubble likely unless.
Well, hold on. There is something else though. So
of course, there's always other things.
What I didn't get to say the other day is after they are in the bubble for a few weeks, they may be able to go out on excursions.
Right.
And that's planned excursions. So that's something where now there will be a worry when all of a sudden you see them loading them up on a bus or whatever, so they could go to, I don't know, the zoo or the forest.
You ever been on a cruise? I think of
I will never cruise. Never.
I went on a cruise once. A Disney cruise, which I'm told is not an actual cruise. It's more of a floating Disney thing. But I was on that, and they have these things you can buy. You can buy excursions. When I hear planned excursions, as I think of it, it's go see Mickey's treehouse or whatever. That's what I picture in my head of excursions. I can't imagine what excursions these NHL players are going to go learning.
Try Glen Abbey Golf Course or
something. Learn
your little packed lunch to take with you. Your little juice box with you.
Right. Learn the importance of caribou to the Inuits up at Edmonton. I'm not trying to think what these excursions could be like. They
didn't get into specifics on that.
That's the kind of thing that would be on a cruise ship. I gotta go. Just to start, the baseball thing really. And we talked about it in the pre-show, but it really does apply to what we're talking about today too, just because it is the fact that, this was predictable, obviously. And it just shows that you have to take this thing crazy seriously. This is not something you can screw around with. It's not a small, it's not dangerous. It's dangerous. I think what we're learning is it's not as dangerous to these athletes. It's not dangerous to them specifically, but it is incredibly contagious. And the issue of it is, if only 1% of people are dying from it, but it's more contagious. That's more people dying. That's the reality of it, So
there's still long-term effects.
We don't know long-term effects. Right. We don't know how easy it is to get it again. Right. There's a bunch of things there that we don't know. Right. So
and we have to say that it may not be fatal and it may not have detrimental effects to the athletes themselves, but when we're talking about them exposing themselves to their parents and their grandparents,
we're all around people.
Sorry, go ahead.
We don't send our elderly away, not ever see them again. We live in a world where we get generations together, and that's what we should do. So the reality is that all exists, and it's not surprising that the number of positive cases is coming up among kids. I have a daughter here who's 18. She's got a fever today. She woke up today with 101 fever. Mm-hmm. All right, she's got a sore throat. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have a cough. But one of my son's friends they were playing outside. We don't let them play outside. Had the same thing, got tested, and everything's fine. But because there are people still are going to get sick. This thing. So the reality is, but younger people are definitely out there more and more. Just partying and doing stuff that younger people do. So they're going to get it more. They're going to surround themselves in more situations. And us old people who don't do anything, but at all, basically, we're safer for sure, but at what cost? They have a happier life. So I don't know, but I'm just saying that I think that I'm really happy for the NHL and the NHL players, and the way they handle it, and it really just does deserve one more thought of okay, we can actually look forward to this, because like I said, I'm not a baseball fan like you guys are. Mm-hmm. But if I was a baseball fan, and even me, I watched the game last night. I'm bummed. I'd be bummed out that that this happened. It's just this is feels like the beginning of the crumbling type thing, you know. And
well, Jan made the right point. The fact that there is a limited window here. They're trying to play 60 games in 66 days, and the problem here is if you have massive positives like the Marlins are having, what they're going to have to do is, right off the bat, they're going to have to play double headers to make up the games because everybody's got to play 60. And if you have massive positives, once they test and find out who's negative and who's positive, they have to sequester the ones who are positive, and then the ones that are negative, they'll have to add players from their minor league facility to make them whole. So it's a whole complicated process.
It's very complicated, and that's fine. I mean, I think they can handle that. That you know, it's a tough thing, but you know, they can handle it. It's definitely, to me, baseball is going to be way more compromised as a sport. And we talk about this championship or whatever, then hockey's going to be.
Well, yeah, because they're going to have inferior players playing.
All kinds of players playing in this thing. You know, it's going to be like all over, and
a lot of them.
And that's fine. But again, because at least in hockey, we have like everybody basically healthy, everybody coming in. And so I got a couple texts from people who got in the bubble yesterday, and it was a funny thing, you know, like to get. I don't know if you guys got any of these, but it's like, hey, from the bubble, you know, like, hi, in the bubble, excellent, we're finally in the bubble, that kind of thing. It was cool, you know, it was exciting. I know that you're just in a hotel, you know, but it's like it feels like there's this like grander, you know, scope to it all. Like we're in the bubble.
Yeah.
And they were telling me different things. Like the one guy told me, yeah, there's a free Tim Hortons in Toronto. You know, like inside the bubble, there's a Tim Hortons you can just go up to and get free stuff from.
Is the official gum of the bubble yum?
Yeah, it's got to be, right.
I don't even know if that exists anymore.
Reminds me a little bit of like when I've had invites to Eagles training camp down at NovaCare last couple of years. They've had free Rita's water ice, and oh my god, the kids are like, free?
Yeah, people are nuts. I know. I mean, players who can afford to buy a $2 cappuccino, you know, it's like there's Tim Hortons, you know, and they're all hitting it hard, and
even millionaires like things for free.
Everybody. It's also the thought process of considering all the other ancillary pieces of the puzzle that you might have forgotten, which is what makes it the overall environment, right? And just getting back to the baseball, right? We talk about people being young. Well, if anybody listened to what Freddie Freeman said when he got sick, and he had 104 fever and didn't know if he was going to make it through the night, was his thought process. If that's not a sobering thought to make you consider how you're supposed to handle things appropriately, nothing will. And that's part of the problem, right? Athletes always think they're immune to everything.
Man. I mean, that's
clearly not the case, given a guy who was in very good shape, just admitted that he didn't know whether or not he was going to make it through the night.
It's not a guarantee that you're, no matter where you are, you're going to be okay. I mean, I've had friends I had one friend who was really young who died from it. You know, it's possible, and there's no question. Even athletes are, that's for sure. And that, you know, there's a mitigating risk type thing going on. You know, that's definitely, and it's hard to deal with that. You know, for sure, because we all want to be as safe as we possibly can be, and you know, and yet at the same time, how can we can't shut our society down completely? I understand that. You know, we all understand that. So it's a really I mean, this is a reality that we're still 5 months into, which is very early in the whole thing. We'll figure it out. There's one we'll figure it out. So I'm not like super worried about that.
Right.
It's going to be a year. I think it's going to be a solid year before we do figure it out. And
no, I agree. There's one part of the bubble we haven't really talked about on the show much. I got into it a little on Sirius today, and that's with the referees. The officials actually got there before the players, and they're having like their own mini camp. There's actually 20 officials. So what I say for those markets like Philly and Toronto and Chicago, where they really hate on officials there, you may not be able to hate on them this time because there's going to be so many different officials that the one that you like to usually kill, you may never see that official.
I think that aspect of this is awesome, you know, like, and it also is going to definitely be the kind of thing because different officials have, I think we're going to see more than ever. We're going to learn about the tendencies of officials than ever before, to the point where I think people are going to be really fascinated on Twitter and stuff like that as who's officiating what game. I think you're going to see a lot of that because it really is like anybody could officiate any game any day. So it's like,
well, we know that
one innovation. Go ahead.
Don't you think for sure that, you know, like if you're in a series, I'm a big believer in that the same officials should stay with the series, the entire series.
Oh no,
they're not going to.
I really.
That's really worked well in baseball when they have the same crews. No.
Angel Hernandez
totally different in baseball. I think
Angel Hernandez notwithstanding, you can't compare anything to Angel Hernandez. Maybe Joe West.
I mean, I honestly feel this. I mean, I know we can sit there and say no, but I mean, there's a rhythm that gets going in a series that an official allows certain things to happen. And if you have the same officials all the time that are calling certain things and the players understand what that is, you're going to just have better hockey. You're going to have
there's one innovation, Eck, that I don't know how it's going to work, and I don't know if the league knows how it's going to work. And I'll be looking for in these really garbagey preseason games that we're going to watch because they're going to be lousy. They're using a Fox 40 P-less whistle, and it's an electronic whistle of some sort.
A whistle that doesn't urinate? What are we talking about here? Exactly.
It's called the Fox 40 P-less whistle. It has no pee in it.
It's a good thing.
You're talking about the little thing on the inside of the whistle.
You're gonna rip on me for my crab joke, but not that.
There's no little pee.
Yeah, yours was way worse.
That's a real thing.
Yeah, yours is worse.
Way worse.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you when I've gone to
Mike wasn't good. Yours was worse.
His was horrifically. His was telegraphed from literally 5 miles away.
Yeah, right.
The difference.
There you go.
But here's the thing.
So first thing to look for when you go to buy a whistle.
So, Eck, it says the Fox 40 whistles work where cell phones don't and communicate like a GPS can't. So,
what does that mean? What exactly does that even mean?
It's incredibly mysterious sounding. I'm like, this is just like, it sounds like this is like the Riddler telling us this press release.
Whistle or GPS? I mean, what are we talking about here?
Here's the issue.
I hate those GPS enabled whistles.
The whistle, it automatically blows the whistle. So you never have to say, "Wait, I meant to blow the whistle."
Is this like the U.S. Air Force buying a $30,000 wrench or something?
Listen, like that? I'm doing this research on the fly. Apparently, without the little P there won't be any dirt or saliva or anything getting up in the whistle.
Okay. The P is that little ball that's inside the whistle.
Right. Yeah, well, the P is always inside the whistle.
And will it automatically, as soon as you've sent that whistle, it will automatically signal to NHL.com stoppage in play, penalty. Does the degree of your whistle, the sound of the way you whistle, if it's like 2 toots, are we getting a minor? Are we getting 3 toots? Is it a major?
I don't know. I thought
tootsie goodbye.
You would think you would think on this show P-less whistle would be self-explanatory, but apparently not.
PEA, not PEE, guys. Learn how to spell it.
Right. I know it's a great show title though. So there's the thing to me, like, instead of the whistle altogether, just get one of those quick things and put like shock collars on all the players. That's all you do. That will stop everybody in their tracks and they'll know what's going on. It's perfectly sanitary and it'll add a little bit of excitement to the whole thing. It'll be like, wow, like a little bit of craziness, like electrical shock going on. Players will definitely be nervous. They won't want to take off sides. They'll definitely not. Soon they'll not be making any, and it'll be like Pavlovian. They won't be making any infractions at all because they're getting shocked every time electrically.
Rush wishes his dogs could be P-less.
Good idea.
If you wanted to buy this whistle, it's about $6.42.
I definitely want to buy this whistle. Bruce, show me exactly where I can get it.
$6.42 on Amazon. So
on Amazon, the P-less whistle?
The Fox 40 P-less whistle.
I have to
we can test it out on this show.
I have to give Funky Cold Zadina the award for the best message so far in the chat. He says Mike is currently leading the Tour de France.
Actually, so here you're gonna love this. So the whistle actually has the power of 115 decibels. It could be heard. It could be heard up to a mile away.
I like that. All right, that's pretty good.
Every dog in Edmonton's gonna be like, ah!
That's really necessary when there's nobody in the stands.
Wow, this is fantastic. All right, I got one.
Reverberation effect.
We're gonna look. I'm gonna bring it up here. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen.
Get it on Amazon Prime and get it for
right here. I got it on Amazon Prime. I'm gonna order it right now as we're on here. Okay, so here it is. Hold on a second. Let me go back. Stop sharing that. I'm gonna go over here. Start sharing this. Here we go. So here it is. The Fox 40 Trico. The Fox 40 Foxco Orange Classic P-less whistle.
Yeah,
115 decibels, single with lanyard.
There you go.
This is it. So, yeah. So nothing to jam, break, or freeze. Without the little ball inside of it, how does it whistle? Like, what is actually this? We're going to take this apart on the air. Okay, I'm going to order this.
That's what we're going to have to dig into it.
It'll be here Thursday, July 30th. I'm doing it right now. I'm going to get out of here before my address. Okay, and there we go.
You don't want your purchasing information there.
That's true. All right, so
put your credit card in your.
Yep.
All right, we've buried it.
Buried it. buried. It's at the core of the earth.
We're going to have some fun on this show.
Yes, which was the
that was awesome, Buzz. Russ, I'm going to give you all the credit in the world for that, Russ. Thank you.
The dismissal or firing or quitting of John Chyka, the divorce of Chyka and the Arizona Coyotes, which came down yesterday. And I just have to say, Russ and I and Ak, we've been talking, you guys as well. We've been talking about Chyka and his likely departure from Arizona for a couple months, and it was not tied to any outside excursion or permission. It was regarding the situation with the testing of players leading up to the draft. And from a number of people, Darren Drager, Elliot Friedman, they mention it, but they don't say it's at the core of the whole situation. And we don't know for sure because, we're not going to know that but I would have to say, Russ, that I think it's completely off base if people don't think that the whole situation with the drafting and the testing didn't have anything to do with this, because I think it did.
No, agreed. I mean, again, if Eck were to take a poll and call the other GMs in the league and ask them about that situation and how they felt about it, they were angry. And again, that doesn't bode well if John Chyka gets another job in the league, because good luck making a trade, because if those GMs all still have their jobs, you're going to be the last guy on the list. He basically alienated the entire league by doing that. Now, apparently there was another team maybe that was going to hire him, but you have to believe that that was the start of him not getting along with that team because of what the fine may be and everything else, and not telling them about it. Like, the team clearly didn't know about it from what we could tell.
As well as apparently
the owner, I should say, because the other CEO bailed, obviously.
All right, I'm also sending you a whistle, okay? So
thank you.
You and I are each going to get a P-less whistle that we're doing.
As well as apparently the new owner's son is involved in the management with the Coyotes, and it's going to be a more hands-on situation. So that's probably another thing that Chyka was not happy about, because he basically had complete autonomy to run the Coyotes. But Anthony, this is the thing. I mean,
wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I know you need to interrupt, but Mike, you're doing a great job. But I just sent this to Julie Robenheimer accidentally. Hold on. How do you think Julie Robenheimer is going to respond to a whistle being sent to her?
I don't know.
She said people whistle. There we go. But this is the thing, Anthony. Purportedly, the team that was making overtures towards Chyka was the Josh Harris ownership group that owns the Devils, that owns the 76ers, that is trying to own the New York Mets, Crystal Palace in the English Premier League. And apparently, in their way of trying to get around the lateral move clause in Chyka's contract, because he had just signed a new 4-year contract, they were offering him something where he would be above and beyond that. Like an overseer.
Going to be hard.
The phrase I used when we discussed this earlier would be almost like a major domo of sorts of all. It sounds to me like, at least based on the description you had, like like sort of an analytics major domo over all Harris Blitzer group property. I mean, properties in this case among multiple leagues. At least that's how it reads to me. If that was the type of position that was being offered to John, and is it a backdoor way of having him run the Devils and be the Devils general manager? Where is his back? I mean, again, it comes down to where is his background? It's all most predominantly in hockey in this case, and analytics in this circumstance. Although, again, we've also discussed how the hockey analytics community has been highly critical as well of Chyka, because of the fact that the data or whatever it is he was involved in was not publicly available or to be scrutinized.
And that's
here's an interesting fact that may have gotten lost over time. I'm reading a sporting news article, and it basically said that at the same time that tweet came out that the Coyotes said they talked to the league and they have no further comment.
Right.
The Athletic's Craig Morton reported that the Coyotes said they do not believe they've broken any rules and simply asked prospects questions about their eating habits, supplement use, and workout regimens. Now, if it became more than that, like we all think it was, that's where I think the ownership got blindsided by this.
Right. I think that there's an interesting thing about this that you know, like, so a long time. I know Chyka just signed the extension when he just signed it
recently. It was the season
3 months ago.
Right. 3 months ago. Now, prior to that, he was by far the lowest paid GM in the league, and I talked about this, like, because I, you know, was talking to it. So I know at one point, you know, when they were looking at, we talked about this when Carolina was looking for a GM, and the owner of Carolina was willing to spend like no more than $500,000 a year for the GM. That was and that was part of the reasons assistant GMs and stuff like that were turning it down, because basically that's generally, from what I understand, you know, and doing my research on this, and I did quite a lot of it, talking to different people. 500 is like the top an assistant a really good assistant GM would be making. That's what an assistant GM, where an actual GM would be, you know, closer to $1 million, you know, right in that range somewhere, 750 to $1 million at least. And Chyka's, until this extension, was making $250,000 a year as a GM, as an NHL GM, which was like, you know, crazy cheap.
Hired at age 26, right. And with a resume that, let's face it, not at least right. Based on what you would normally hire an NHL general manager for, was not an extensive one.
Right.
But I do.
Carolina was using his salary against the GMs they were interviewing, saying, "Listen, you know, we're going to pay you $500,000. Chyka's making $250,000." And so some of these were already assistant GMs making $500,000. The whole thing was like kind of like it's interesting. I mean, as we're saying, it is a lot of money in Arizona. All right, yeah, but it's a lot of money regardless. But it's an NHL GM. I mean, this is your franchise. You're putting in this guy's. You're not just handing him $250,000. You're handing him $85 million or whatever. I mean, you're handing him the ability to spend all of your money however he's going to spend it.
And I find it sort of humorous now, in hindsight, now, as that Chyka was billed as the poster child for analytics when he was hired. Right. And now in hindsight, after this divorce happens, you know, you have people who we like and respect on Twitter who are disavowing Chyka as not being an analytics guy, and I'm like, I'm calling bullcrap on that, because he was.
You have to go back and also see the reaction as well to when he was hired, which again, it's been a few years back in this circumstance, and the question is again, who was making the commentary with regards to him being an analytics darling? Was it members of the analytics community back then? Most of them are disavowing and saying no, because of the fact that his information was not, that's been known that it was not publicly vetted and unknown at the time. But at the same time, you know, the interpretation was, again, that because he was young and part of a purported new guard or nouveau type of general manager at such a young age, at age 26,
right,
that he seems to get lumped in that way.
Yeah,
and half how old I am. That makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah, it's reverse ageism. That's what basically.
I'm also probably like, you know.
God. All right, I'm going to give you a quote.
They also drove his salary, probably, right? I mean, they figured he's desperate for the opportunity.
Right.
They can basically lowball him,
and that was my point. That's exactly my point, Dan, as to why his salary was that low.
Yeah, it's a great point. And then but a lot of these other guys, and you know, the NHL is interesting because you can go with analytic guys on your team, and you should have analytic guys on your team. But you know, I don't necessarily believe you should have an analytic guy as your GM. I think that I think you want the GM to be making, like, you know, instinctual hockey decisions based on all the information you can get to him. Some of that should be analytical. Some of that should be like sight, you know, some of that should be scouts in the field, whatever. It should all be there. And then he makes, and I think what Fitzgerald has done in New Jersey has been fantastic, to be honest. Like, I think he has done a heck of a job. He's not that old either. I mean, you're not talking about a really old guy. You're talking about the new wave, and what he's done there.
He's like your age.
Yeah. And thanks, Russ. And you know, and what Fuda did, you know, in LA, and you know, he's a guy. I mean, we're trying to get Fuda on the show because I was listening to his XM interview. Was just he was just amazing, and I've talked to him before too, just incredible. But here's a guy, you know, who's got all kinds of experience, and who, you know, Lombardi wouldn't let interview with other people in LA, so he trapped him there for all these years. When other teams called asking for permission, which is rare that an NHL team would do that to an assistant GM.
Well,
that's surprising for Lombardi, because Lombardi is like one of the bigger survivalists and afraid to do anything wrong type
that's the other interesting part of. But I mean, by the way, it's like some of the abuse that Chyka's sister got on Twitter from some people and this is why social media is sometimes the last refuge.
Days, yeah.
I mean, come on, be a little more classy than that. But what's come out after this is the speculation. I think it was Jim Matheson was the first one to mention Peter Chiarelli as a potential GM candidate. I mean, can we get away from the guys who have failed twice?
Yeah.
So they hired a guy who was fairly well thought of in the industry, a guy who, look, regardless of what you believe what Thomas Drance said about analytics, a guy who was maybe willing to utilize new age information to be successful.
Yeah,
we're also presuming that all he did was basis his views on analytics, which I highly doubt was the case.
Yeah,
as a GM, you have to take multiple views. He was willing to make a bold move to go after getting Taylor Hall, and now we're basically saying, well, we're going to throw him out with the bathwater, and therefore we need to go back to the old age. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, regardless of what you think of him,
from John,
he still didn't do a horrible job. In Arizona, they're probably a better team now than they were before he started.
And let's go to quote, Russ. One other thing I want to add to that, Jan, because it's very perfect. I mean, the things he did there were interesting. I'm very curious if any of this has to do with what he was willing to, with his feeling on how hard to go after Taylor Hall to keep him there or not. Because what I was hearing in recent days was that Arizona was making a push to try to re-sign Taylor Hall.
Right.
And, the question, Taylor Hall would then be going to ownership and talking to them, because when you make a signing like Hall it's not a GM sign, that's an ownership signing. When you're going to
usually the GM sits in. He didn't.
The GM is definitely throwing his opinion on, but you don't sign somebody to $8-9 million a year without the owner being all in, right? So,
but apparently the divorce was already going on when this meeting with Hall.
It was already at 6 weeks. That seems to be the timeline, especially when I was checking in with Patrick Johnson from the Vancouver province when he did his article about the possibility of Chyka going to Buffalo.
Right.
And the timeline on that was it's within that window of time where if they already know he's looking to exit, then you're not going to have him just talking to your most valuable potential.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the John Chyka quote from when he was hired, and he definitely mentions analytics. He says, there's not one measure that will embody the value of a player. There are different metrics, and they have different strengths and weaknesses. It's about finding out what the metric is telling you and then trying to answer some of the questions it creates. So clearly he was into analytics.
Right, but you can use analytics supplemented by other information.
But it doesn't matter. He was into it. The people that are saying he wasn't.
Got it.
Okay, no, in other words, again, it's what their issue was the fact that I think there's this interpretation of Chyka basically being a quote unquote darling of the analytics community because we put this big massive bubble out and say that it's everybody in one lump when in reality he was working, and as stated, the data and information that he had was not publicly vetted. It could not be able to be seen or vetted by the community at large. So therefore, they didn't want to necessarily claim. They're not going to necessarily claim him.
It was proprietary, is what you're saying.
But we do have, unfortunately, those again, and there are many columnists that are. It's easy for them to lump it all into one community. And as much as I respect Steve Simmons as a columnist, he has been guilty of doing that, of lumping it into every analytics into one big bubble when it's much more sophisticated than that. And there are different elements of that community. And even though he's working, again, Chyka, for an analytics company, if that data is not necessarily available, you can't necessarily lump him in and say he's quote unquote an analytics community darling.
And here's the reality of the Coyote situation right now in terms of Taylor Hall. Elliot Friedman reported that the offer that they made to Hall, which may have been an opening offer, was a 5-year deal at $7.25 million, which is not going to get it done. He's gonna make over 8, maybe 8.5. Possibly 9, depending on how many teams get into it. But
length is going to be hugely important right now in the world. I mean, the length right now is even more important than it's ever been, right?
But right now, the Coyotes have $79.9 million allocated towards 17 players on an $81.5 million cap. So what that means is they're probably going to have to dump Kessel, dump a couple other players to create the room to sign Taylor Hall,
and that won't be easy.
If it's possible,
right?
And the problem is it sends a signal also to Hall that if they've got to make that spacing, right, if his goal right now is to pursue a championship in addition to being paid, do you feel if they're subtracting other key elements to Arizona's lineup to get you to make sure to get his contract slotted? If I'm Hall, I'm like, what exactly are you guys building here?
Right.
Yeah, but you can say the same thing about Calgary, which has been rumored, right? Because to make room for him, they may have to jettison Johnny Gaudreau, right? So it's the same thing. You're taking away from one and adding it to another. It's a zero-sum game to a certain extent. You're not augmenting. You're replacing. You're not supplementing, but you're inserting, right? So that's part of the problem there also.
You do have to convince Hall that by just having him to replace, it's not just it can't feel to him like it's a lateral move if I make that. What do we have built here versus if I go to Calgary?
Right.
I feel the structure there is better for me and will help me in my journey to winning a Stanley Cup.
This is definitely where you don't want an assistant GM as a temporary GM right now. This is not this is not a good time to have that. Like you need for Hall, because Hall's got to, if Hall sees say, I don't know. We don't know what Hall's relationship is with different guys, but as we've learned, everybody has a relationship with somebody, right? Like there's all kinds of relationships, just going back to, other GMs who may have known this player when they were in juniors, know this guy's. They're different. Everybody knows somebody in hockey. It's just everybody's been worked, somewhere in upper, east, in Moosonee, Canada or whatever, with somebody. And it is funny how you see how this plays out. So if there's a GM out there, that potential GM out there who Hall's worked with before, respects, or something like that, say Mike Fudas, for example. Like Fuda is a great example because Fuda was all about Wayne Simmons. Wayne Simmons and Fuda's career are intrinsically intertwined. He told an incredible story about that, how he went. And
the car and all that.
Yeah, this story. Yeah, the Simmons family had to decide whether they were going to let Wayne Simmons go for hockey or their other son go to the CFL. They could only buy equipment for one of them, basically.
Yeah.
And they brought in there, and he got Simmons drafted. He made all that happen, and so that kind of relationship with different players, if they hire somebody that Hall really likes or knows or in some way connected to, that changes things.
Yeah, but they're not going to spend that money. The one worry I have, and I probably had 4 interactions with Sullivan on Sirius, all good ones, all player related, never got the impression he really worked anything on the business side. And so now him sliding over and getting the GM spot, if the owner's son and the CEO are kind of doing the business side, they really do need someone that knows the business of hockey a little bit. And that's where I feel like Arizona might suffer in the short term.
Right. All right. I want to move on.
The puzzle I'll add with Hall to keep in mind is you talked about whether or not he thinks they're a cup contender.
Yeah.
Should be very interesting. If Arizona beats Nashville and Kemper plays well, and Calgary loses in round 1, and we see poor play out of Rittich or Talbot if they turn to him, Hall's got to start thinking, okay, is Kemper the guy who could potentially take this team to the cup, which from what we've seen over the last year and a half, it's feasible. That may have an impact in terms of his decision-making process. Maybe not a huge one, but if you're thinking of I want to win a cup, you need to consider where you're going, regardless of what they're going to do to free up the room for you also.
There is good structure in Arizona. I've said this before when we've done it, when we've discussed our series predictions and everything. I think they're going to win that first-round series against Nashville. And the defense is good. The key is there enough there to augment Hall consistently over the life of that contract to feel like not only am I being paid, but I got a shot at a cup each year.
Right.
Yeah, but the one thing that Chyka can be criticized for is, and normally this is a good thing for teams to do, is to lock up their young players. But he didn't, Clayton Keller, they didn't get a bargain on Clayton Keller. He's making over $7 million. I think he's a really good player, but it's not a bargain. They traded for Kessel. That's almost $7 million for a guy who's clearly declining over the last couple of years. They did it because they wanted to make the playoffs this year and thought he could still provide offense. He really slipped. So some of the decisions in the Nick Schmaltz move, trading Dylan Strome, where they thought that, they were their mindset was Dylan Strome was a number 1 center. He's more of a number 2 center in the league. They gave up on him early. They got Schmaltz. Schmaltz got hurt, but then he came back and he signed a deal for a little under $6 million. I think that's a little overpriced for Nick Schmaltz. Right. I think he's a good player, but he's paying premium dollar for guys who haven't proven it yet. And usually when you get that long-term deal on somebody, you're getting a bargain, and they didn't get bargains.
His strategy was to lock up their young talent, and when it all didn't come through at the same time, it doesn't look great. Now, they are in the playoffs and they still could be a cup contender, but down the road, it could definitely hurt them salary-wise.
And he also probably factored in the increase in the cap, which would offset in terms of the percentage of the cap utilized. Now with a flat cap, that theory unfortunately goes out the window, which is burning him as well.
I mean, Chyka, for all of his youth and for all he did there, whether right or wrong, or and obviously some controversial things he did towards the end, what I found to be respected by other GMs around the league, despite how young he was, that people thought he was smart, that he was sharp, and some of the older GMs, like some of the old school like American GMs that are out there, Burke's not a part of that group anymore. Lombardi, they're changing, but there's a lot of guys in that group still, and they're hard to impress. They're not like. They're like the Paul Holmgrens in that group. There's people out there that just they all liked him. They all thought he was. They didn't have the opinion if he was too young. They didn't have the opinion, and they weren't happy about what he was making for sure because that affects them. But I think as the respect was there. I want to move on to some other hockey talk for a second. Corey Crawford. Okay, this to me the biggest story right now going into the playoffs may be this, and because he practiced with the team on the 25th, right before they left.
Right.
He was involved in a scrimmage, gave up 3 goals. Reading some of his quotes, and that was the 25th. So this is the 27th. There is probably no player singly more important to their team possibly winning than Corey Crawford, because you're going up against Draisaitl and McDavid, perhaps, with Malcolm Subban, otherwise. And, or they're going to go with this really young kid who they like, but, who's been impressive, but probably not the best position to put him into right now as far as career goes. And what about the other guy, Russ? What's his name again? I can't remember his name. I'm sorry.
Is he a Swede? I think I think they signed him out of Sweden. He was really
a couple
great
games for them, and they really like
Colin Delia.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There he is.
I don't know. Nobody's a goalie expert. Nobody is, but I don't know if I see a huge upside in him.
So we can kind of all agree that this is Crawford or Chicago.
Yeah, no, it's Crawford or bust.
In huge trouble. Sit there and say Chicago's been playing better. They've got all this experience. You can say all that you want to about that, right? But until you sit there and say, until we know Crawford is playing,
Dilly had COVID, and that's the complication of this is we don't know what it did to him. We don't know when he had it. We don't know when he felt better from it. But maybe because
something's on here, and he said I was quarantined in my place in Chicago for the last few weeks. Mostly flu-like symptoms. He said it wasn't too bad. He says I'm excited to get back. I'm trying to get into shape as quick as possible.
That's the problem right there.
Yeah, he said the first few days I started feeling symptoms. That was the hardest. The last couple of weeks, maybe a little bit more. So it sounds like you're looking at it's been a good couple of weeks since he's had it.
Right, because he couldn't do anything when he had the symptoms, and he was quarantining. So now he's behind getting ready for this new season, resumption of playoffs, and that's a problem.
So here's what he says. Today I felt decent for the first time on the ice. I'm just going to try to build off that. This is the first time. This is just 2 days ago again, remember?
Yeah.
I'm doing the goalie drills, pushing around the crease. It felt great. It's just a little bit more of the cardio part, the endurance in the legs. And you're gonna have to have pretty good cardio to play against McDavid and Draisaitl. After you get a few practices, that'll be a lot better. Obviously, there's not much time, but I've never really been someone who skates a ton in the summer anyway. I feel like it takes a few practices just to get your legs under you. It doesn't matter what you do in the gym. That's Crawford's opinion, right? So, and watching a little bit of the practice of the goals he let up, he looked fine. He looked like he was moving okay. He didn't look, like he was totally out of place or anything like that, or super slow. He just looked, he was giving. I didn't see saves. I saw goals that went against him. But at the same time, this is such a huge deal because if there's any chance at all for Chicago here, if there's no team I kind of feel worse for than Chicago in some ways because of the whole the fact that they trade, that they know this is going to happen, they don't trade Robin Leonard, right, in any way, shape, or form. That doesn't happen. Of course,
yeah, but
there's no way we could have known this. But here's it's such a weird situation that they had a goalie that really would have made this series incredibly interesting. If we have Robin Leonard in goal for this series, that's everyone's looking at this totally differently, right? I think
there's still a long shot.
Right, but without Crawford now, they're a longer of long shot.
They're a longer
exceedingly long shot right now.
To me, the two the teams that we hear, we were hearing early on was okay, Chicago's got a serious shot at Edmonton, and obviously the Rangers and Carolina, which I don't think there is a favorite in. They're
I think the Rangers have slipped into even being more of a favorite now that Dougie Hamilton's probably not going to play.
Right, and And I think that, but I also think Brindamore's played that up, and I think he's happy about that. I think that's what he wants.
I think it's one of those circumstances where I think Carolina's going to use that to, I hate to use the rally around flag, but it's something that I think Brindamore will certainly use.
That is completely in Rod's and Carolina's wheelhouse, right? Like that is that's the way they've always done things. They liked.
More adversity, boys. Let's go.
Yeah, even when they won the Stanley Cup, they were like, it was us against the world. No one gives us respect. We're down here in the South. Remember all this going on,
Here's an interesting thing. Like Delia is 26. He came out of college. I don't know how good he really is. He's really not been that good. How many games has Malcolm Subban played for the actual Chicago Blackhawks, and how many minutes?
0.
I'll give you that. I think he's played 2 games, but I'll double check.
1 game, 1 minute.
1 game, 1 minute. Right. I mean, whole game
is memorable.
He's played a minute.
That's not good, man. They need Crawford or they're done.
Hot minute, as they say.
No, I mean,
hot minute.
And he made a save. He made a save in that minute.
Like I said, hot minute.
1,000 save percentage.
He's got 1,000 save percentage.
Let's talk about Malcolm Subban for a second as a goalie, because in general, if he's at his absolute best, when we've seen him at his absolute best, when he can be pretty spectacular.
That was even 17-18, and that was the last time.
I thought he had a couple decent moments with Vegas.
I agree, and I think that the one thing I will give him, and when you're looking at the team you're playing against, which is a team you have to be fast side to side against, if you're not a side to side goalie, you're not going to be able to beat the Edmonton Oilers. You're not. They're going to make pass after pass after pass. They're going to set up plays. They're not going to. This is not a team that takes a lot of slap shots from the point and tries to score goals. This is a team that makes a ton of So Malcolm Subban, that is his game. He is really good side to side. He is quick. Quickness is his thing. Maybe even more so than Crawford. Now he's not as good as Crawford. Okay, no question. I'm not saying he is, but I'm saying as far as that one little element, if I'm going to give if I'm going to try to find any positivity in this whole thing, Malcolm Subban's game sort of suits him to play against the Oilers.
But the only time we saw really good play out of him was when Vegas was on that magic carpet ride.
Yeah,
Chicago isn't that team like that with that momentum, and that's the problem because Chicago's defense isn't good.
Yeah, when Fleury was out and Oscar Dansk and Dylan Ferguson and all these guys were playing, and they were all playing above their heads.
Yes.
Yeah, Subban played well.
Yeah. That
was the only time
he did. That was the only time. So if Crawford is out, you got Subban, you got this other kid.
If Crawford's out, they may get swept or they may only win 1 game. That's it.
Do you go as the other kid who I was talking to somebody in Chicago?
Colin Delia now.
Yeah, right. Did play a couple games for the Blackhawks last year, I want to say.
Yeah.
And looked really good.
He looked okay. His numbers aren't great.
Numbers aren't great, but what were his numbers, Russ? What were his numbers in that situation?
I looked it up. I think he was at a 906 or a 908, something like that.
Kat, I remember if I recall having a conversation. We talked with Kat Silverman about him, and I'm pretty sure she likes Delia.
Yeah,
I have to double check with her in terms
feeling around Chicago. When I talk to people around the team, is they definitely.
I may be wrong on that. I'll have to talk with her.
He was 26. He was with Merrimack. I mean,
26 is super young.
They were rumored to be comfortable with him as the backup.
Right.
If they would have not signed Leonard, I think he has 18 NHL games under his belt. So in a disaster scenario, okay, but yeah, I mean, really, they're a long shot to beat Edmonton with Crawford.
Right.
Without Crawford, it's stick a fork in them.
I think that's likely the case. I wonder if we'll see. Maybe you'll see both of them. If
you might see both, just because they might.
Why not? Right? If Crawford's hurt, why not give each a shot? I mean, this really is kind of it is a little bit of house money with Blackhawks. I think you'd have to admit. The
good thing is
they would have been.
He's played 18 games overall with the Blackhawks, 16 of them in 18-19. He was 16-13-1 with a 912 save percentage. And 266 goals against average in 32 games at Rockford this year.
Against Rockford, okay, yeah. I mean, that's different. But yeah, for sure. I think, we'll see. I'm looking forward to that. The other
it's hard to look at that and say he's going to beat Edmonton. That's my point.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. The other series I want to bring up, unless you have any little small news things, is the series that everyone's been talking about, which to me is a fascinating one and is getting more and more fascinating, and that is Columbus and Toronto, which is an odd, and I know we talk about Toronto enough on here, so I wouldn't bring this up unless I actually felt like this was one of the ones that the people I talked to in the bubble yesterday were talking about more than any other. And there is an unbelievable disparity of opinions on this series. It is like, if there is one series that is all over the map as to what people think is going to happen, this is it. Like, if you're trying to sit there and say, there are people that say Columbus will roll Toronto. I've talked to some people like that are, that they just, the way they've played, they just have to remember how they played against Tampa. Toronto's a much less version of Tampa. I've heard this kind of stuff. This is like the whole Well, and then there's people who say, like we were like Kevin Allen come on here and like Austin Matthews. He starts every season like he's set on fire and is incredible. Maybe he comes out in this series and just dominates the whole thing and takes it over. And who knows what Elvis will be or whatever.
I do know that like during the season, Nick Foligno was quoted regarding the Leafs and said something to the effect of, they don't have a lot of respect for the will that the Leafs will put up. And I mean, honestly, based on the way that the Leafs have played against teams that play a similar style to Columbus, they split with Columbus during the season. I think there was a third game that they missed out on at the end of the year. But based on how the Leafs play against Boston, how they play against other defensive-minded, tougher teams.
Right.
This was probably the worst matchup that they could come up with because, and especially with the fact that Columbus is going to be 100% healthy. They're going to have Seth Jones. Both of their goaltenders were playing well at the break. I don't say with any particular glee that I've picked Columbus. The Leafs are going to have to prove it to me that they can beat a team like this. And right now, I doubt it. I'm doubting it.
To sit there and say, and I brought this up to somebody else, Mike, and you're right. It's easy to sit there and say that, you have this like, okay, they don't match up well on certain things, that teams that do things against them or the way they play against other teams match up well. But then when you look at the one thing that I think people are forgetting is they're not a great, obviously they're probably one of the worst defensive teams in the of the 24 that's left, right? I don't think there's any getting around that.
No,
they are playing probably the worst offensive team left.
No, I think Nashville's worse.
Maybe Nashville, okay, but I think that the Columbus does not pile on goals either. So the one advantage Toronto has, I think, is that their defense can maybe get away with a little bit more than they usually can.
But here's the thing that I think is interesting. Columbus brought 5 tons of equipment into the bubble. 5 tons.
5 tons of equipment. No, they are
10,000 pounds worth of equipment.
They're incredibly
what are they doing? What does Torts have to do?
It's not just Torts. It's like
the Russian army. Like, what is this?
They have like an amazing amount of stuff in general.
That's great analysis.
Technologically and stuff like that. They've all
back together the cannon. So they can shoot the cannon off when they score goals.
Cannon. They got the cannon. They smuggled the cannon in.
Yeah, he definitely takes a lot.
It's like an explosive supply.
No, it is interesting that they brought all that stuff in, and I think that Columbus is oddly confident. Like talking to people around that team, they have a real cockiness about them. A lot of the guys on that team, who played, for the Cleveland, or Lake Erie
Monsters, yeah.
Well, I mean,
like these incredible playoff runs. Like the Lake Erie Sea Monsters went like almost an entire playoffs 2 years ago without losing.
Mm-hmm. But that's part of it. Actually, the fact that they were without Bjorkstrand, they were without Atkinson, they were without some of their like supplementary secondary scoring that kept their offensive numbers down. So when you say they're one of the worst,
we're talking Atkinson, he's not secondary. He's both.
No. I know, but I'm saying other than that, when you're losing Atkinson, you're losing your best goal scorer.
Josh
but
Anderson
they also lost other guys.
You had Jones missed time. You had Bjorkstrand was out. I mean, you had almost everybody out during the year.
Yeah.
Whereas the only thing the Leafs are getting back Ilya Mikheyev, and he was playing really well when he got his wrist laceration. And now for the first time since December, they have their entire blue line on hand. Right. The problem is when they had their entire blue line on hand, they were still one of the worst defensive teams in the league.
So wait, I have breaking news.
Go ahead.
And this is for the haters out there like the Michael Jellos. PK Subban is now working out with The Rock.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
That's
okay.
So that tells you that
is that germane to the conversation?
No, it's news, but it's
a bit of a left turn, but that's
random Ross.
It was random, but it's to point out that he is not done, and this is a guy that got embarrassed this year. And like I told you, I thought he would come back strong, and he's clearly taken this offseason serious. So that's all. Nothing to do with Breaking news could be anything, Anthony. It could be like your mom.
If they make a sequel to Hobbs versus Shaw, then PK Subban will place Idris Elba in that. Right? Is that what it is?
Before we go, I want to know something here. I want to know how excited people are about. Jesus, sorry.
The lighting works.
More stuff.
I want to know how excited you guys are all about tomorrow. Sorry about that. And just the game starting again. I mean, like the concept of this. I mean, the players are totally fired up. And you're seeing that has really been astonishing. And I just want to know how you guys are.
First.
I, for one,
I'm really excited.
Come on, Mike.
Yeah.
We're all excited, Ek. We are.
Come on, after almost 5
months. You guys all go in
the
corner. I'm taking.
There you go. After almost 5 months, of course I'm excited.
Yeah, because Russ is like, I hate preseason. I mean, all this stuff.
Well, I do too, but the whole point is.
I mean, these games are going to stink, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to watch them.
You got to get their legs under them against another opponent.
Right.
So as long as you mentally accept that, and
then
it's fine. We're going to listen. We know these play-in series are going to be, for lack of a better word, a mess at times. Everybody's still trying to a single preseason or whatever we're calling it now, exhibition game is not going to iron out all the delivery issues of getting teams back up to the pace that they were at.
Right.
With hockey.
It's I mean, I think this has been like, to me, like, the whole thing of like, I've watched a couple games on NHL, on the NHL app, like from a lot, just we're trying to watch these teams do playing each other in the matchups. And it's just having hockey on in the house. It's like just one of those things.
It'll be great.
It's awesome. Like, when you put hockey back on in the house, it's awesome.
The play-in games will be a little rough, at least initially. The round robin games are going to be really rough because there's going to be very little emotion, in my opinion, between the two teams that are playing each other.
Oh, I don't know. I think the emotion will be there. I think Brad Marchand underplayed it on purpose, saying, "Well, it's going to be sloppy and it's he's doing that." You never listen to what Brad Marchand says. That's the first.
The adrenaline of healthy hockey players who have been bottled up forever, and
I think it'll be real.
Sitting in those hotel rooms waiting to play, because they're in the bubble. Like, it's like that, Jackson Brown line or whatever. The only time that feels too short is the time we get to play, from the loadout. Yeah. That's what these guys are going to feel like.
Loadout, yeah.
These guys are going to feel like that very much. They're going to be like, we just want to get back on the ice. And I think the energy level is going to be incredible, even in these preseason games. Like,
frustration from the bedspread, not getting the right mint on the pillow. It's all going to be coming out in those games.
They're going to be all hopped up on Tim Hortons donuts, and they're going to be
flying coffee.
Yeah, no, it's going to be crazy. You're going to see all kinds of stuff. I mean, NHL just apparently, when I was talking to people who saw the arena, they're just like, they did a hell of a job. They like it's going to.
It looks great.
How many players are going to be in the stands watching the other games? That's to me is going to be an interesting part.
And that is going to happen, right?
Yeah, it'll probably happen.
I asked early on about that, and they weren't sure whether they were going to allow that. And I said, I don't know why you wouldn't let that happen. I mean, I think that's amazing.
You've got enough space. I mean, listen, there's enough spacing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
you don't load up. I mean, obviously, you don't, maybe not try to load things up, but at the very least, you can easily. I mean, we're looking at our background here at on our show here, and you can see that you can easily. Now you're going to lose some part of that because of everything set up
with cameras and stuff.
Well, they tweeted a picture of the NHL yesterday of what both arenas look like. You can see the advertising like they have in Major League Baseball. With the tarp basically over some of the seats, so they're not going to be maybe in front, but there's clearly still enough room for them to.
Yeah, but remember, like the side that we're watching from doesn't have any advertising on it, so those are just empty. Like when I was talking.
No. Remember screens now? That's
screens.
I thought they were only doing the screens mainly on the side they were going to see.
No. The pictures they showed yesterday looked like they were kind of all over the place.
They're all over. There's 7 screens.
Tweeted out yesterday.
Obviously, you have plenty of space in there to get every player who wants to watch this in there, and you've got suites, you've got all kinds of things that you.
Well, there's definitely at least a Jello seat is free in the press box if someone wants it.
I mean, I would have a suite for every team. That their suite the whole time, just again to like socially distance everybody. This is like if you're a Flyer player and you want to go in, that's your suite. You can go watch the game in that suite. Just go.
Yeah.
I mean, I did this building for the World Cup of Hockey, which was fun because it's the same kind of thing, like 4 games in a row, 3 games in a row, and it's a great building for that. I mean, it's set up really nicely for that, and it's got a great press box. It's got a great, it's got nice suites, and Mike's been there plenty of times, so But it's like it's really a good building. I think that the players are in there, and then getting like. getting the players to maybe talk to the broadcast. Like, I want to hear what Crosby has to say about this other game that's happening. I think
they're not going to do that.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun.
But they won't do it. It
would be board material act. No way.
That would be fun. Why not? Like, they're not the game he's playing in. I mean, he could just say,
they're not doing.
And they're going to say anything stupid. I don't know. That's not bulletin board. You're not talking about teams playing against teams. I'm talking about teams.
It's all bulletin board material, and there's no way they would do that.
Yeah, maybe potentially, but I don't know. I just want to see that, and I'm sure the players are going to want to be in there watching games because it's like they're going to be bored out of their minds. If I'm a player, I'm sitting in there watching all the, I can see the players setting up, like their Xboxes on the TVs in the suites, and just having a good old time with it. I mean, I think it'll be fun. Anyway, all right, we'll talk more about that tomorrow for sure, and then tomorrow we'll get into this whole thing because 4:00 tomorrow is the first game we've got, right? Going to run till like 1:30 in the morning every night, so it's going to be fun.
Yes, and we'll get to see whether Elliot Friedman shaves off his beard or not.
Becoming Joe Thornton, like.
Right. There you go.
I said Grizzly Adams.
Once the actual,
they showed a picture of him versus Thornton. It's pretty close.
Pretty close, yeah.
Once the actual games start on.
Let my hockey go.
What's that?
On August 1st, you're talking?
First game is Rangers Canes at 12:00 on the
August 1st, right? And then obviously podcasts. We won't be podcasting Saturday or Sunday, but
Monday, we don't normally, so that's a good start.
Monday we'll be podcasting, and I think we're going to try to, whenever we can, guys, do the podcast like at 11 or something like that before everything starts.
That's fine.
And
I'll consult with my scheduler.
Depending on what we can do and whatever everybody can do, I think it'd be fun to talk about the games before they all get going and the games before the night before, so we can have some fun with it. That
Mike will have to mix his tang early now.
That's true.
Oh boy, he's gonna be bouncing all over the screen.
Thanks, Anthony and Jan and everybody else.
That fresh tang that you mix with water, yeah, that's good.
And Mike, thank you guys too. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. One more